This video was recorded before chapter 1045 came out, so some of the theories and guesses have been confirmed. Some edits have been added using this new information, but for the most part, the video will be referencing the events of chapter 1044. Okay, I know we are all still excited over the two most recent chapters, but let's take a sec to relax and take it all in. Okay, enough taking it in. Let's just get right into it. I'm A-Mess, and today we're going to look into Luffy's awakening, the other name of the Gumu Gumu no Mi, and how does this impact the rest of the story. A little late, but spoilers for chapter 1044, which honestly, if you clicked on the video, you probably have already read the chapter, or at least the spoilers, but just in case, spoilers incoming. So at the end of the previous chapter, we learned that Luffy is Joy Boy. Now this is coming from Zunisha, who was Joy Boy's companion, which means we can believe that statement to be completely and 100% true. Then in this chapter, it's revealed that the devil fruit that the world government changed the name for is in fact the Gumu Gumu no Mi. However, when they revealed its true name, they didn't say true or real name. They said other name. This was in multiple translations, including the official Viz translation. The fact that they say other name could mean that Luffy's fruit is actually the Gumu Gumu no Mi. It just gains a different name when it awakens. This may or may not imply that there is another devil fruit that did have its name changed. I think this because a couple of theories that came out after this chapter believe that it may have been Zunisha's devil fruit that had the name change. But this simply could have been a translation thing, so it's too soon to look deep into it. Anyways, I digress. So the name of Luffy's devil fruit is the zone type mythical human fruit model sun god Nika. I know, crazy, right? Oda literally mentioned the existence of a god earlier in the arc, only to reveal that Luffy's devil fruit turns him into that god. I genuinely thought this was going to be a situation where Oda mentioned something in passing and we wouldn't learn about it for hundreds of chapters. Like maybe when the Straw Hats reach Elbaf or Lone Star, or maybe even Laugh Tale. Okay, so Luffy's awakening turns him into Nika. What do we know about Nika so far? He's supposedly a sun god. He represents liberation and freedom, so slaves and prisoners worship him, and we just learned that he brings smiles to the faces of the people. Now, in terms of the devil fruit's ability, first and foremost, it gives the eater of the devil fruit a body that has all the properties of rubber. So Luffy is still a rubber person. This is only the base state or the human form of the fruit. The hybrid is the exact same as the human because it's a human fruit and Luffy is a human. Oh, but wait! His Gear 4th has this theme in the shape of a ribbon that floats around the back of his head. And if I'm not mistaken, that typically represents deities or divine beings in Buddhism. And I do remember Hyogoro saying Luffy looked like a guardian deity in that form. So maybe Gear 4th is his hybrid form. That could be the case since it was Rayleigh who helped him learn that technique. Assuming Rayleigh learned of Luffy's awakening at Laugh Tale. I don't think he specifically told him about that form, but probably gave him some advice and led Luffy to come up with that gear. And lastly comes the full transformation, which we saw with the most recent chapters. Now first, let's start by addressing the elephant in the room. If Luffy was a zone type, why didn't he have the ability to fully transform the moment he ate the fruit? Well, the reason is hinted at when Luffy first awoke. When he fully transformed, he released a tremendous amount of Conqueror's Haki or Supreme King Haki. And it was so powerful that even Kaido the Beast, the strongest pirate, one-on-one, Kaido wins Kaido. Yeah, that person was shaking in his boots. Or tail, since he was in his dragon form. Okay, anyways, Kaido was scared by the insane pressure behind this Haki. Could Luffy have exhibited this level of Conqueror's Haki when he was a kid? I'm going to go ahead and say no, he could not. So this could imply that in order to gain the other transformations, you needed to exhibit a certain level of Haki. After training with Rayleigh on Ruskaina for 2 years, Luffy learned how to use Armament, which unlocked what I believe to be his hybrid form in Gear 4th. Then after learning how to use Ryo with Conqueror's Haki, he unlocked the final requirement to use the full transformation, which was also the awakening of the mythical human fruit model Nika. Why is it an awakening, you might ask? I'll tell you why. Because Nika is apparently an actual god. Not like Eneru or Usopp. No, he is an actual deity. So transforming your body into one of an actual god must be very taxing on the body. So it requires you to awaken the devil fruit to use the full transformation. In another case, when we look at Sengoku's devil fruit, which is also a mythical human fruit, we can see it seems to also have divine origins, being a Buddha. But it's not an actual god. The Japanese name for the devil fruit is Daibutsu, which is informally used to describe large statues of Buddha. So this means that Sengoku doesn't become a god, but instead a divine statue that radiates holy energy. I know it can sound confusing, but just know that Sengoku doesn't turn into a god. So for him, he didn't need to awaken to turn into a giant golden statue. Or you know what, maybe he did. But he didn't need to know how to use Conqueror's coding or even Haki in general as a prerequisite to the awakening. Maybe he just awoken in how normal awakenings happen, which we still have no clue about. This could be something related to how mythical zones work in general. Teki 101 mentioned in one of his videos that maybe mythical zones need to be awakened to use certain transformations or abilities, like Marco for example. Maybe he didn't unlock his flames of regeneration until he awoke his devil fruit. In Luffy's case, his awakening unlocked his final transformation, Gear 5th, which I'm just going to dub full Sun God transformation, until Oda reveals what Luffy is going to actually call that form. Now, this transformation has given Luffy some new abilities. The first seems to be that it greatly enhances his Conqueror's Haki, as indicated by everyone's frightened expressions when they first sensed it. It also granted him more flexibility and speed without diminishing strength. So like the power he had with Gear 4th, with the flexibility of his base form and the speed of Gear 2nd. It also seemed like he could change the size of his limbs at will without needing to blow into them. We see him take full advantage of this when he reached down into the performance floor, grabbed Kaido like he was a toy, and then began flinging him around. He then changed the size of his other arm by simply flexing, and he then proceeded to repeatedly slam Kaido into the ground like how the Hulk did to Loki in that Avengers movie. Another ability he got is the normal awakening power to turn everything into rubber. He demonstrated this when he grabbed a piece of concrete, lifted it up to block Kaido's blast breath, and whipped it back at him. These seem to be the main abilities of the awakening, but there might be one more which I'm not sure if this is just a creative choice for comedic effect or an actual ability, seeing as how the Gorosei stated that the Nika fruit grants the user the ability to fight however he so chooses, leads me to believe that this might be an actual ability. So after Luffy awoke, he began to act all goofy, kind of like a Looney Tunes character. He hopped around all funnily and would wiggle his arms around in like a dance, and his eyes would shoot out of his head whenever he was surprised. Now, if it was just Luffy doing this, then that would have been like, this is just for comedic effect. But when Luffy yanked Kaido out of the performance floor, Kaido's eyes also shot out of his head. And the same thing happened when Luffy started twirling him around. Kaido's eyes were spinning around unattached from his main body. And he had a really goofy expression on his face when that happened. After Luffy threw him into the ground, Kaido's expression became serious again. This kinda makes me think that Luffy has the ability to make everything he touches become like a Looney Tune. That's the sort of freedom his awakening grants him. He could possibly affect those he touches and not just the inorganic matter around him. Of course, this could have also just been something Oda put in just because he thought it would be funny. So only time will tell us how Luffy's awakening truly works. Now, I know a lot of people probably didn't like this new awakening transformation and slight personality change, but I want to take the moment to defend this and explain my thought process as to why this happened, and not only why it works, but how it will benefit the story in the long run. If you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. To each their own. I just ask that you hear me out before jumping on the hate train. The first thing I thought of when I heard the name of Luffy's fruit is, how does Nika relate to Joy Boy? Zunisha confirmed that Luffy's heartbeat resembled the drums of liberation, which sounded just like Joy Boy's heartbeat. We can assume this because after saying he hears the drums of liberation, he told Momo that Joy Boy has returned, and we see Luffy smile in the same panel. Then there is Nika, who is the warrior of liberation. So the first thing to come to mind is that Joy Boy also had the Nika zone fruit, and he awoke in it. But then I was like, then why didn't Zunisha say something like, he has awoken? Nika descends onto the mortal planes once again. Luffy has awakened his devil fruit, just like Joy Boy did 800 years ago. Well, it could be because Oda didn't want to reveal Luffy as both Joy Boy and Nika in the same panel, so he saved it for the next chapter so people can focus on the Joy Boy part for a couple of weeks, then reveal the Nika part. But I have another theory as to why Zunisha called Luffy Joy Boy and not Nika. What if Joy Boy is not a name, but an epithet? And what if Sun God is not a title, but a name? What if Zunisha was being completely straight with us when he said Joy Boy has awakened? What if Joy Boy and Nika are the same person, and after he died, he reincarnated as a mythical zone? Now, I know this seems crazy, but hear me out. When Luffy awoke, the first thing he did was smile, and apparently the original Japanese sound effect of him smiling was Nika. And during his fight with Kaido, he kept laughing, so you could say he was a happy man or a joyful boy. Joy Boy, huh? Now, let's dig a little deeper. We know that devil fruits are connected to a person's lineage factor, or their DNA, seeing as how Vegapunk was able to create an artificial dragon fruit using Kaido's lineage factor. And in the latest chapter, we learned that zone fruits have a will of their own. So if we look back to when Luffy first ate the fruit, did anything change in his personality? Kind of. Before he ate the fruit, he wanted to join Shanks' crew and go on awesome adventures with them. But after he ate the fruit and went through that whole ordeal with Shanks sacrificing an arm to save him, then Luffy decided he wants to form his own crew to become a great pirate just like Shanks. Now, if we look at this from a psychological perspective, wouldn't Luffy want to make an amends for causing Shanks to lose his arm? And join the crew to help them become as great as they possibly could be? Instead of doing that, he chose to stay at his hometown and train to surpass them, despite him feeling guilty about what happened to Shanks' arm. This could have been a result of his personality changing slightly after eating the fruit. The way I'm picturing how this works is that devil fruits are connected to a person's lineage factor, and Joy Boy's lineage factor is in the devil fruit as well as his will. So when Luffy ate the fruit, he gained a piece of Joy Boy's lineage factor, which gave Luffy a semblance of his own personality. We currently don't know a lot about Joy Boy, but we can take a guess at what type of person he was. We can assume that he was a leader of sorts. Whether he was a king, pirate captain, or a revolutionary, we know that he not only had an influence on pirates, assuming that Jolly and Jolly Roger refers to him, seeing as how the Roger part refers to Gold D. Roger, but also the One Piece, probably being the person who hid it. So Luffy decided to become a leader or pirate king, to put it in another word, after he ate the fruit. because that was Joy Boy's will. And as we stated earlier, both Joy Boy and Nika represent liberation and freedom in some fashion. This is important because it relates to why Luffy wants to become the Pirate King. In Sabaody Archipelago, Rayleigh asks Luffy if he has what it takes to rule the ocean. Luffy responded by saying he doesn't care about ruling. It's the freest person that becomes the king of the pirates. This is actually significant because Roger apparently said the same thing. We know this because after Luffy responded to Rayleigh, Rayleigh thought of Roger. Why is this so important? Well, because there were some moments during the Wano arc when both Luffy and Roger were saying what they wanted to be, and the people around them thought it was funny or ridiculous. However, we don't know what they said because the scene cut out and we only saw the people's reactions. The only person who didn't laugh at what they said was Oden. And well, Yamato as well in Ace's mini flashback. Now, with this info, I don't believe they were saying they wanted to be the king of the pirates. If they were, why would Oda cut that part out? So I am assuming they both stated that they wanted to conquer the ocean and become the freest person in the world with nothing, not the ocean, the government, or anyone else holding them down. We can't support this claim by looking at Oden's reaction. Oden was in awe of Roger's statement because his entire life he felt in prison, because Wano was a closed-off country that didn't interact with the rest of the world, and he was the son of the Shogun, who had a lot of rules, regulations, and restrictions placed upon him. Hearing Roger talking about becoming the freest person in the world resonated with him, and is the reason why he wanted to go with Roger the Laugh Tale. Luffy at first didn't really care about becoming the freest person, aka the Pirate King. He wanted to go on an adventure with an amazing pirate. Then he ate the Gumu Gumu no Mi and gained Sun God, Joy Boy, Nika's will, and saw liberation. Mainly for himself, but also the people around him, as depicted with how many cruel and corrupt leaders and pirates he's defeated. And he's always brought smiles to the faces of people he's encountered. No matter the hardships these people had faced, it always ended with him smiling as they waved goodbye to the Straw Hat crew. Nika most likely had done the same thing while laughing, which earned him the epithet Joy Boy. Now that Luffy had awakened the fruit, he will probably be laughing while he is in Gear 5th. So Nika's goofiness earned him the title Joy Boy, which is now resonating with Luffy's awakening. In my opinion, it would be weird to have an edgy or badass character with the name Joy Boy. I personally thought it was a ridiculous and stupid name when we first heard it at Mermaid Island, which is why I don't mind people hating on Luffy being this completely ridiculous character. But this was planned for a while. The name Joy Boy sounds goofy and playful, so Luffy messing around in the middle of a fight makes sense. And him not having any limitations on what he can do works for the warrior of liberation, who is the embodiment of freedom. Not even the laws of physics or reality itself can hold him down anymore. Heck, even fear, pain, anger, and loathing no longer hinder him, hence why he's acting so carefree while fighting. His awakening literally put him in peak condition with no worries so he can fight while having fun, which as we've seen, is when Luffy and also Kaido are at their peak. Now since this is an awakening, there is bound to be some major drawbacks. Like Luffy can't stay in this form for an extended period of time. He may even become incapacitated for a few days after his awakening runs out. Also, I believe that Luffy may not be able to enter this form at will. I think it would take a desperate situation where he's fighting for people's freedom, and he can't afford to lose to awaken his Nika form, which could then put him in direct opposition to Im-sama. Now I am assuming Im knows about Nika's fruit, seeing as during the Reverie arc, we see him stabbing a picture of Luffy whom reminded him of Joy Boy. So now that Luffy has awakened, Im is probably going to force the Gorosei to make a move and do everything they can to stop Luffy, which could be a problem because we know Shanks spoke to them about a certain pirate, which when I first saw this, I thought he wanted to talk to them about Luffy because at that point, it was after Dressrosa that Luffy had just made enemies of both Big Mom and Kaido. So I thought that Shanks spoke to the Gorosei about them giving Luffy some space while he dealt with both of them. Then several people out there started bringing up Blackbeard, and maybe Shanks was trying to get the Gorosei to help him deal with them. So I threw my original theory out the window. But now that we know Luffy's true fruit, it could be possible Shanks talked to them about Luffy because he knew what the true name of the Gumu Gumu no Mi was. And he was sure Luffy would awaken it, so he met with the Gorosei to buy Luffy time until he awoken. Shanks probably assumed that the war against Big Mom and Kaido, mainly Kaido, would put Luffy in a situation where he was backed into a corner. But he was desperate to win and free the citizens of Wano from Kaido and Orochi's rule. Before I continue with this train of thought, I want to backtrack a little and explain why I believe Shanks knows the true name of Luffy's fruit. It involves Roger, and what they found at Laugh Tale, and why it made them laugh, but made Shanks cry. Maybe the reason they were 20 years too early could be because they learned that only a god could claim the One Piece, and one will descend in 20 years. He will have a body made of rubber and bring smiles to all those around him, which Shanks eventually learned was the power of the Gumu Gumu no Mi. It probably wasn't difficult to learn what fruit it was because the Gumu Gumu no Mi was in the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. So he looked up fruits that turn you into rubber. Then he went looking for it only to learn that it was with Who's Who. He then attacked the ship and stole it. Then the rest is history. Now the reason Shanks cried was because Roger was dying. and he couldn't fulfill his wish of finding the One Piece before his time came. Of course, this simply made Roger laugh, because he clearly wasn't meant to find it, but he instead decided to become the fuel that lit the fire, and start the Great Pirate Era. But that still begs the question, who is Shanks? How does he steal a precious item from the world government and then meet with the top brass casually like that? There's clearly more to Shanks' character that could provide us more info, but for now that is all I got. Now as to what happened with the meeting with the Gorosei, they probably assumed Luffy would not awaken the fruit, so they agreed to leave him be, especially since they were busy with dealing with the abolishment of the 7 warlord system, and then with Sabo and the revolutionary army attacking Marijois. So Luffy's awakening allows his rubbery body to have even more freedom and strength than it ever had before. He can affect the world around him by turning it into a Looney Tune cartoon. And the reason he acts the way he does is because he ate the devil fruit that turns him into sun god Joy Boy Nika. Someone who fights with no restrictions and brings smiles to those in need. And that is going to be it for this one, folks. I would like to thank you all so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. I hope to see you in the next one, and remember to keep having fun. See ya!